Hello, and welcome to Royale Without Cheese, our bi-weekly podcast in which we discuss both the classic and the unknown of art and popular cinema from the then and now. We are your hosts, me, Leonardo Miranda, Miguel Aido,
Hi there.
hello, and Tomás, Ferreira,
Hey.
the sweaty man. As part of our award season segment, we'll be looking at the likely contenders for the 2024 Oscars. Today we talk about the Holdovers, but before any ados, don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, or simply give us a like. The Holdovers is a 2023 Christmas comedy drama directed by Alexander Payne and starring Paul Giamatti. Set in 1970, the film follows a bad-tempered boarding school history teacher forced to chaperone a handful of students with nowhere to go during Christmas break. Premiering at the 50th Telluride Film Festival, it was named one of the top 10 films of 2023 by the AFI and 3 Golden Globe nominations. However, did RWC enjoy their detention with the best fish-smelling teacher of 2023? Fellas, how do we say, what do you smell?
Well, Alexander Payne wouldn't like that Christmas movie label. So I read.
Well, he's
No,
wrong then.
I think he said it was actually nauseating to call it a Christmas movie.
I will call it
Paul
a
Giamatti
Christmas
said that?
movie.
No,
Alexander Payne.
Oh,
the
that's
director.
interesting.
Yeah.
Well, the whole vibe of the movie, including the score of the film, points to that. So it's
There's
strange
Christmas
that he
songs
rejected.
on it.
Yeah, there's Christmas
it's
songs on it.
Christmas time, Christmas songs,
Yeah,
Christmas
yeah, so-
cookies.
It's not Home Alone, I guess, but I mean, even
Filmmakers
then,
trying to
there's
be
similarities.
provocative. Oh yes, I did all that work in the film, the season and everything, but I reject your hypothesis, like Quentin Tarantino says. I really enjoyed being in the tension with Paul Giamatti, and I think he's the most interesting character in the film. In actuality, that's one of the reasons why I can endure the first act of the film so much, because right from the get-go, his character is very strong in his convictions, very strong in his traits, his irony, the richness in expressions, in how he enjoys torturing his students, and really attacking their privilege. Uh, yeah, I mean, I love his humor, his demeanor as a teacher, and has a character, his flaws. He's very interesting to follow, and he's really a good balance against the fucking arrogant students that you have to cope with by the first act. Because it's honestly, I don't know about you guys, but one of the things about the first act is that it's very difficult for me attach myself to any of the students, particularly the one which the film intends you to connect with, who is Angus. There is a little access to his interiority, and as I understand, I mean, one of the things this movie does beautifully is how it relays exposition over time, and it leaves a certain mystery about his character. So much so that when certain things are revealed, because you are biased to the morality principles of the adult characters who are overseeing these students, and case in point, Angus, who remains the only holdover that needs to be taken care of. And by adults, I mean the two in the trio, which are Mary the cook and Paul Giamatti, Paul Hunnams, the professor, because they're so biased to their morale, to their rigid principles, to their good character, especially on the behalf of Paul. That's the whole idea about the character. A good character, being strict, objective, not lying, no deceit, because they're so kind of biased into him. You're very ready to judge the students and ready to judge Angus. So when certain things are discovered about his past and the fact that his father is in this kind of absent position, and there is a situation of unfairness towards him, how his family isolates him, you do end up feeling for him. But I have to say that I think the film could give me more of in the first act, because you do spend a long time, almost an hour, without really having a little channel to the interiority of the character. Certain things are suggested, and that's fine, but I do feel the need to having a little something. He's such a snot, and I get it, but he's such an annoying snot that sometimes I really have a difficult time understanding why am I coping with these students in the first half of the film, especially because there are certain things that the character says that are so annoying. He's such an oddball kid and really self-absorbed and self-entitled. Certain things he says, like, what is it when the other student, there's a student that his glove is stolen by an arrogant prick the Kuntz kid, and then Angus kind of comments with,
He left you one, so
yeah, it's
that would sting a little more.
over the top line, like stupid snot kid. He stole you one, so you would only stay with one, so it would hurt much more. And
I'm not sure if he delivers it like that.
It's a bit like this, you know. And then he
But
says,
Angus has a lot of those lines. Like,
yeah,
you know,
and
profound.
he also says,
I
your
think
mind
everyone
is a
kinda
shallow,
does.
your mind is a shallow cesspool, and an arrogant one at that. And I'm like, who says this crap? You know, and it just sounds cartoony and fake. And
I
I've
think that's
seen
kind of
people
the
like
point, yeah.
this. I think
Yeah.
that's the point. I know
I
that's
think
the
it's
point.
also to
and-
connect him to the Paul Giamatti character, who also speaks in that very elaborate manner.
But the thing is, I'm more
And it's
sympathetic
comedic, yeah.
with
Yeah.
Paul's
Yeah,
character
yeah.
because
And you buy
I'm
it
very
more from him.
biased to and I'm more biased to him bringing this arrogant white privilege nuts down, and I really like this kind of teacher who is very willingful and very strict in his convictions to make good character, even if it means giving bad grades. I'm all behind them, and it's more difficult to be behind the students.
Part of the interest, I think, also with the language, as you said, is how it changes. I mean, throughout the film with our getting to know the characters, and as you said, yeah, in the beginning, it's kind of pretentious, and they all speak kind of the same way, which makes sense because they're supposedly smart kids, especially Angus. And Paul Giamatti's character is also an intelligent person, so they kind of all relate in the beginning of the film through that thread of the language, of the posh language. And it's interesting. I thought it was interesting to me to see how Angus' way of speaking changes throughout the film. He becomes much looser and a much more interesting character, I think, and much more grounded in the way people actually speak, I think. So it didn't really bother me. And I think also he really gave me a sort of non-actor vibe. Like I was sure I was gonna read something about it in the trivia of the film. And he did. It really was his first credit. Although I thought it was even less. Like I thought he did have no experience.
I think he did like theater in high school.
Yeah, I did feel the same way. Like the first time, this was the second time I watched the film, but the first time I was really not liking his acting.
Really?
Especially
But I didn't
as I
mind
got
that,
to know
actually.
him in the first time. I was like, it's not. I really am annoyed by this kid. And this time around, I accept it better, especially because the writing is so good that he redeems himself by the later half of the film. But I was a little bit bothered by it first.
I really
mhm.
didn't mind because for me it was just so clear almost that he was a non-actor, and kind of the same with the other ones, to be honest. Not the sort of the main adult characters, but the kids. All of them really kind of gave that impression, and I thought it was interesting. I mean, it was just.
And there's a complicity with the camera, almost like the camera is aware of his freshness or his greenness, that sometimes you have these extreme close-ups to his face. He suddenly turns the camera and he says something, and I'm like, oh my god. Like when he sees like the Greek pottery in the museum, and then he turns the camera and says, it's candy cane.
Yeah,
I was
and in a
like,
dorm room
it
as
felt
well.
a
He
bit
puts his
dorky,
head
yeah.
out of the door.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
That was very
exactly.
jarring. That
There's
was a
actually
very
there's quite
interesting choice.
a few shots like that of his face very close to the camera.
Yeah, it's true.
But I
And
really
also,
Mhm.
no, just also shots that kind of make you think that he has kind of the perspective of the other person's perspective of the other character. So, for example, in the ice skate rink, he kind of looks directly at the camera, and then you see that it's actually Paul Giamatti looking at him. But it's interesting sometimes how the camera plays certain characters, and you get to see characters looking straight at the camera. I don't know. For me, it's another element that adds to the whole Christmassy, cartoonish thing that this movie has going on, that gives a sense of surreality, and I'm not sure how to describe it, but it's kind of reminded me of Dazed and Confused and these sort of films. Even Paul Giamatti's film American Splendor, that is very meta built, and yeah, I mean, my mind went there because of Paul Giamatti, but I think the film has other things in common.
Yeah, I did felt that way. You know, there's another moment when they're kind of playing a game of cat and mouse, and Angus is running around school. The professor is after him, and he's a bit ahead of Paul Hunnam. So he certainly looks at the camera, and almost look like he's complicit with us in this game of fleeing the teacher. But coming up around to a question of mood, I find that this film does this play on my brain, which is very unique in the sense that as I was watching for the first time, but also the second time around, I feel like my brain is being attacked by this anachronism thing where I feel sometimes the movie fools my brain into thinking that I'm actually seeing a film that is a hidden gem from the 70s. Like, this is an actual 70s film. It was so well shot and so well put together in the ambience that it wants to achieve, that it doesn't seem like a film of today imitating something of the then. It really feels like a film from the 70s, down to the logo of the Universal Pictures Studio from back in the day, the PG rating disclaimer at first, the long zooms, the pans, and even the fact, that you have the insane asylum speaks a bit too coincidentally to that film, A Flew Over Cuckoo's Nest by Jack Nicholson, also in the 70s. I always go back to that film. So yeah, it's interesting. And of course, the beautiful use of music in this film that is very reminiscent of Inside Llewyn Davis, even like the look of the film. So this indie folk music kind of aspect. Let's sleep in the sleep of tomorrow. It's just
And it's
very
also very kind of
hypnotic.
teenager coming of age sort of music, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's
Very
one thing I
true.
was thinking is like this film, certain ticks that it has, certain performances reminds me like of Wes Anderson. But it's because the film is trying, I don't mean this like badly, but it's trying to imitate the films that influenced Wes Anderson, like those 70s like Al Ashby films
Yeah.
like Errol and Maude and others. And so it's interesting seeing a film like almost try to be what it has influenced the artists of today. I think that's interesting, but I don't feel it could be annoying like to see a film like this that are trying to recreate something that it's from the past and it's not really coming back. But I don't think it is annoying. I think it does it very well, but it also stands on its own as just a very well told story that has a great mood, and I think it will be very rewatchable every Christmas for me, especially. I think it'll be very good for that type of mood because it's cozy. It's it has like a bittersweetness to it all, and I think it's good. I really enjoyed it. I liked all the
Yeah, I
performances
mean,
as well.
yeah, I was gonna say that next. I mean, starting with what you said about the feeling like a Christmas film, yeah, I definitely agree, and I think a lot of the themes are very sort of Christmassy about redemption and the guys coming together and
Hmm.
finding common points in their lives, and the mother grieving. I mean, there are a lot of things that kind of make you sort of agree that this is a Christmas film because yeah, the themes kind of converge into this beauty of beauty of the characters and redemption and all these things. But yeah, speaking of the characters, I think that I mean Paul Giamatti is such a great actor. I mean,
He's a
there
So
are
great
good.
some
actor,
scenes
and
that I
he's a
was
great character.
really
Yeah,
really emotional with his acting because it just captures it so well.
perfect. Yeah.
I
and
mean,
and it could be so, in theory it could be so goofy and not work at all, with the eye and the delivery, or like the writing of the character. It could, it's that thin line. It almost is too much, but I think he works it perfectly. I buy every line that he says, even when it's super over the top, like "you hormonal vulgarian" or
Yeah.
I love
yeah,
everything he says in this film. I think, yeah, it's a
you are penis
great
cancer in
performance.
human.
Penis
Penis
cancer,
cancer.
That's
It's
great.
so good. Yeah,
Greatest insult.
the writing is
Yeah.
great. I really, I think he's amazing, and everyone else. You were talking about Dominic Sessa, I think that's his name.
Yeah.
I thought I was very impressed with his acting. I think I just like his face. I think he has a very
I have the
particular
exact
face.
opposite reaction.
Really?
His face repulses me. Like, I really
No,
have.
I don't find him.
Like, his slim face, squinty eyes. There's just a corporeal,
I think
physical
I
repulsion.
get that. I just
in
think he has
me.
such a 70s face, like a
I
face
guess, you know, I
from
can,
those films,
you know,
like very
Yeah, and the
rough
curly hair.
face. Yeah, the
I can
curly
understand
hair,
that. Yeah, I
a rough
just, to me,
face.
it just
I
brings
think
me back to the kind of people I've met in high school that were just annoying snots, full of
that,
themselves,
yeah, I think it's
doing
a
this position
subconscious
in the
thing for you.
corner, like they were very serious, trying to exhibit how smart they are, and then they would say over the top exclamations.
But the thing
Oh
is,
Yeah,
like,
this is
the
not this.
mathematical. I've seen stuff like that.
all
It
This
right,
is
always
not
very
the same.
marked me a
He's,
lot, and
like
I
you need
had
a
a very
psychoanalysis.
repulsive. I've met
What's
people
going
like
on?
that that were really repulsive, and I really detested, you know, how they exhibited their smartness in a egotistical way. So he
I
reminds me a
guess
lot of certain people that I've met, and I'm like, nah.
you were saying you felt like, I don't know,
But this is more of a,
because
I think it's more
it's
of a
more
me
of a,
question than a
it's
mistake
probably more of
of
you.
the
I think
character. I think I do admit that. But I
Very
do
much
have to
so.
say, what I think is not of a me question, a subjective point of view, how I see the character, it is another aspect that I think is in absence in the film, which is, I think the first act, because the students are such arrogant little pricks, and I'm so, you know, in favor of the teachers against them. In a way, that's interesting. I think because Angus is ultimately one of the main protagonists, you know, the camera very willingly wants to attach its consciousness to two consciousnesses, which are the one of Paul and the one of Angus. And we clearly see early on that he's going to be a prevailing figure. I think one thing that is missing is, despite there being a suggestion to something wrong with him, something wrong that is absent in in this family, something off to the way he becomes lonely in this Christmas time, there should have been an extra push to make us like wonder what is wrong with this kid. You know, I want to see him. I want to follow him, because there's nothing that personally makes me say I want to follow him. And for example, for me, there's one moment where he kind of helps the Asian kid who starts crying at night, feels alone because he's away from his family, and I like that. That showed a little bit of compassion on his side. That was a golden moment. We see there's a channel opens to his interiority. We see the mask, you know, the cold, arrogant self who hides the more soft-hearted self. But there could have been a simple push, not a disclaimer of everything that is going on inside him. But for example, after he helped that kid, and the whole talk with that kid is about, you know, him crying because he's away from his family. There's a certain mirror image there. After that, he could have gone back to the little photo that he has in his kind of shelf that he sees at the beginning of the film with his family, his father as he was, and he could have felt this need to write a letter to his father, but then he would scrap it and not do it, and would be like, oh, he's writing a letter. Oh, this father, there's something more about his father. He's away. Maybe something will be revealed, but then he would scrap it and not send it at all, or maybe send it, and then the morning after he would go back to the post office or the little post box, you know, in the middle of the snow, and take out the letter, put it, just something that would make it a little bit more invested, but not reveal everything, you know, and maybe then I'll feel a bit more behind him. And I felt that I wasn't as invested. I was much more, the pacing of the first act for me was sluggish, and I didn't care at all for him, despite there being some interest in his quirks and his personality. His arrogance does weigh a lot in me, and I needed a bit more of a channel to his interiority, because I do feel that I only feel attached to the professor and the character of Giamatti that he plays so beautifully well. So yeah, that's the only thing that I would say more of an absent thing for me in the movie. It has cost me
I disagree.
just
I
by, but
disagree.
fair enough. I have two people disagreeing here with me.
No,
Well,
I mean, my counterpoint, shall we say, is kind of short, and I think for me it's enough, because the fact is they are holdovers. They are people that stayed behind for some reason. And for me, I think obviously there's going to be a side which we need to discover still, of how can we empathize with these characters. I think that the premise of the film means that somewhere along the story we're going to see why they're there and empathize through it. So for me, it was a matter of when are we going to see why these kids are here, and what makes them sort of, you know, abandoned in a sense, and through, and then in understanding that, empathize with them. But this is because I sort of got the premise of the film that they're there, and that they're always talking about their parents not being there, that their family is not with them at Christmas. So for me, it was kind of clear that okay, let's see what is the reason why these kids are here. And I mean, I held on
You
to that.
see, I can't do that thought process because I'm so annoyed by him that
Okay.
I
That's
repulse
what I
him, I
was gonna
reject him.
say.
Yeah,
Because
I
I
think it's
like him, so
there's a
I
subjectiveness that we
yeah,
are figuring that
exactly.
we're finding out here that you like him, so you kind of you buy into it. You're fine with it. I dislike him very intensely, so I have a
Well,
difficulty into that.
well,
But also I'm not. I think that
We
you're
gotta
very right
find
in
those high
saying
school
that
guys that did a number on you.
discovering why he stays there is a matter of when, you know. And I think that exposition is very well relayed in this movie in terms of when should we reveal further these things. And I think it's very smartly done when they go to the party of all the adults involved. And it's a Christmas party at Miss Kane's, and then by the end of it, he kind of revolts about being taken out of the party, and you know, not really enjoying Christmas and events, and finally says something which is, "My father is dead." You know, and that already hints at an absence of the father. It's not the whole truth, but it's kind of a half truth, and I like that. But also, what I'm saying is that, you know, by him doing a little letter to his father, you don't even need to see what is in the letter. I just think it would push me a bit further regarding a place of intimacy with him. That's just what I'm saying. It wouldn't change what we already know or how the film was constructed as it is. It would just add a little something that would make me feel more in simpatico with him. And I just felt like, you know, I'm taking an expression used by David Bowie in an interview that I liked. So I just, you know, to me, lacked because, you know, I felt so repulsed that I felt like I needed something extra.
Yeah,
But it's fine.
that's
I
such
think that's
an extreme emotion, repulsive.
I'm
Oh yeah,
repulsed
it's
by him.
just you
Exactly.
know,
That's why you need that more. I also
yeah.
don't feel like I need that because I'm not repulsed by
Mm-hmm.
him. But because you need like, okay, give me something more so I can care for this guy. But
Which
like I
is like,
felt,
it's something more that wouldn't spoil even the film. It would be something
yeah,
more
I
that
feel
I think,
I
okay,
understand. But I from the get go I thought, you know, this guy is clearly like a, in the context of the school, he seems like an outsider by the way he's treated, by the fact that he gets a good grade when everyone else has like bad grades. So, and you know how difficult Paul Giamatti is as a teacher.
he's
He
even more
is,
annoying because he gets a good grade and everybody else gets bad
but that
grades.
doesn't make sense, Tomas. You're
Oh, yes, he
annoyed,
does
and
because
he
he
doesn't even
parades the
he does.
grades.
No, he doesn't. When does he parade the
What?
grades?
I think I'm very good. I'm actually the top of my class. Like,
Who
I
does he
don't know.
say that? Who does he say that to?
He says to his father, but I think there's somewhere
Okay,
else where
that's
he
very
says that.
different.
There's a moment where he's in class and he says he says to the teacher, I think it's quite absurd. We should get out. I think it's quite absurd. And then Paul Giamatti says,
But he's
"Oh, I'm being
right.
absurd." And I'm like, "Yes, Paul Giamatti. Yes, give him to his face." I'm just
What?
annoyed.
He's right. Like, why would he start a chapter when their minds are somewhere else? Like, my
No, I
teachers
agree.
used
I
to
agree.
do that. That's so fucking
But
annoying.
he has the arrogance of saying, "I think it's quite absurd," and I'm like,
But it is
"No,
absurd.
you didn't say that to the
He's
teacher.
right.
Teacher,
You do.
get him out." And
What
and
are
then
you, a
Paul Giamatti
fascist?
says,
What is this? Some fascism?
fascism. You see, it's like that. I mean, I'm so against him that I'm like, Paul, oh no. If he had stopped at like, you know, I think it's quite unfair, but he had to be an arrogant prick. The way he said it, I think it's quite absurd. I was like, you are talking to the teacher. You cannot say that, teacher.
That is
say-
a figure
say
of
the line.
authority, man. Young man.
Exactly. And then he says, "Oh, I'm quite absurd, am I?" And then it's okay. You can thank Mr. Angus Tully for doing
It's a
this.
great, it's a very funny interaction, but especially because he has a good grade, so he also doesn't like, it doesn't bother him if they don't get a redo. So that I think that's also good, but he doesn't bloat about it. Like he doesn't like, oh, see, I got a good grade. You guys know are
He
fucked
doesn't
off.
blow up. He
But I find
feels
it
safe in
funny
his
that
good grades.
that
That's the
everyone
problem.
else kind of speaks the same way, but Tomás is only focusing on this one guy.
But because this one guy is meant to be our
He's the
protagonist,
protagonist,
and that's
yeah.
because this is the consciousness of the camera is willingly attaching herself to the consciousness of this kid, together with the other two components of the trio, which is Paul Hunnam and Mary the cook. And I'm just like, okay, I know this
Yes,
kid is going
but
to be a mainstay,
no,
but
but
what is going to make me care?
but regardless,
And I
he's
don't
still
know.
speaking the same way, so he shouldn't be so.
No,
I
to
mean,
me,
you've
he's not
already
speaking
spoken
the same
that he
way.
represents this high
He's very
school.
disrespectful to
Yeah, but what
to
Miguel
the
is
adults
saying,
with him,
but he's
and
not
that bothers me.
like, he's not the You know, he's not the problem. Like he's not the rich kid who's
Yeah.
super pampered. Clearly, like the other guys are that
Okay.
way.
Yes, that's
He's
true.
more again. He's the outsider in this context. Even if he's a product of his environment. Even if he is an outsider figure, you know, his mother is marrying a richer guy, so he's like in between two worlds. But clearly, his father wasn't
Yeah, you see,
that type
totally.
of.
But that's why I don't have those cards then in the first act. And I think that
But there's
I
some
need to
already
feel.
suggestions. Clearly,
There are some suggestions. Okay, I know there's a stepfather. It's not the real father. It's Stanley. Okay, I do get that. But I need a little bit more of his interiority. Not the full information. I wouldn't like that.
but
But I
we
just think,
already know why you
I
need
need
it
to
more. We already know why because you're repulsed
Yes.
by him.
because I repulsed by it. Yeah, because
Because
he's
he
a snot.
represents this high school
He's
bully.
disrespectful. He's disrespectful with older
We gotta
adults.
find that guy.
And I'm just,
He's Matthew
I don't like
McConaughey,
his
doesn't
arrogance. I don't
confuse.
like his misbehavior. I don't like how he misbehaves.
He misbehaves. Respect your elders.
Yeah. Tipo, I'm so like when I see that scene between the dean and Paul Giamatti in the office, saying, like Mr. Green says, with good character. I'm like, I'm so behind you.
But Paul Giamatti
put
is
the things.
yeah, he's disrespecting authority as well. Technically,
Yes.
he's very
Very
disrespectful
much
of
so.
authority.
But the thing is, the dean is a prick.
And Paul Giamatti is being a prick when he's starting a new chapter on Christmas Eve almost. That's very prickly.
He's doing that because the prick students that didn't study properly want a second chance, and he's even giving them. So they need to suck up.
He's a benevolent
the
dictator.
fact.
And why is he being such a Grinch about Christmas? That's also bad. That's also rude from Paul Giamatti's character. He should be
It's
more
ungodly.
Okay, here, cookies,
What
Christmas tree.
What would you propose that he would propose in class? What other solution?
This is such a specific thing. Jesus.
We're getting stuck up in this scene.
Right.
If I were a teacher.
Like teachers committee right now.
Right now.
Let me call my mom and
This
dad.
episode is turning into that. We need to go back to our high schools and do something about it. Make a better environment.
I think he should suggest the test or whatever he did, but give them a break now and let him go. It's Christmas almost. Like no one's gonna pay attention anyway.
I think so. I think he should do that. I think he should be more benevolent. He should
because it's
summon a
absurd
break.
to even suggest it.
But it's the way that he talks. It's the way that he talks that is disrespectful. He could say the same thing without being a prick. It's your teacher.
Mr.
I wouldn't speak
Professor,
like that.
Please. I'm sorry.
I wouldn't speak like Mr. Professor, but I wouldn't speak like it's absurd. I wouldn't say.
But I mean, let's not forget that these guys are still spoiled rich kids.
Spoiled
I mean,
kids, yeah.
This guy might be the best one of them all, but you mean not give him the right? It's his character.
No, I know it's his
character. The character is rich, spoiled kid. I know he doesn't have the right.
I know he's rich. I know he's rich, spoiled kid. I know that. I'm not saying that he shouldn't be. I'm not saying that he should be rewritten as a benevolent kid. I don't want that. But that's why, against this arrogant, prickish portrait of him, I need a little bit of a channel to his interiority. I just need to see that scene where I'm allowed to be in a space of intimacy with him, where I see a little bit of him writing a letter to his father that never responds, and then throwing it in the bin. I don't need to see what is in the letter. I don't need any information added that destroys me discovering this character over time. But I do need to be a little bit more alone in him. I don't have that.
But don't you ever feel...
It's very hard for me to feel for this character that I know I'm going to be stuck up with.
But don't you ever feel, until the moment where this transformation becomes more clear, that there are moments where he's clearly sort of the picked on kid and the reclusive kid and the kid that has some sort of things?
Yeah,
more or less.
Because I think that
but he still sounds like he's
clear.
Cool because he's so smart.
But this is the kind of hierarchy in high school where you kind of do those things and you have to act cool. It's almost like a compensation when you're not. It's like
fair enough.
If it were a young Paul Giamatti, you would love the character. No, but it doesn't look like Paul Giamatti. It looks like the high school bully from
very different. I find them very different from each other.
But
they are not the same.
But at the end, you do empathize with Angus, or
I do. I think he's very, for the most part. I do like the film and I do enjoy it, and for the most part, I think he does become a redeemable character by the end. He's like I
I
said,
think the
the
last scene is
exposition is
incredible.
so it's incredible. That scene with the father at the hospital is incredible.
Nah, I wasn't speaking of that one, but I was speaking of the goodbye between Angus and Paul.
Okay, yes, it's good. I wasn't like heartbroken. I was much more heartbroken at the asylum, and I think that scene is well deserved by the end. I
Yeah.
like it, but the asylum really broke me the first time I saw it, and the second time as well.
For me, their
Because
goodbyes were really sort of. It's just
Yeah.
his acting.
Yeah.
Paul's Giamatti's acting just so.
I think I was more touched by their goodbye than the scene at the hospital. Really,
oh, I
it
so
was
very touched.
more
But the thing is,
poignant.
I had a connect. I think personally, I had a connection with that type of reality,
Yeah.
and I know what it is to kind of deal with someone who is physically there present but not there mentally anymore, and he's earth crushing. He's horrible. He's the saddest thing in the world, and he's so beautifully shot that there's this glimmer of hope in his eyes that his father is going to reply, and the way that actor who plays the father is brilliant. I mean, you almost feel like he's invested in the conversation, like he's hearing attentively to it, because he yearns to give some kind of response, but that response is not what Angus expects. And it's a very smart cut to the hands of the father reaching out to his kid and holding him, and you feel the warmth of it, and there's the eagerness for him to say something, and he gets close and he says, "I need to tell you something. I think they are poisoning my food." And he looks away and doesn't say anything else. It's so smart of them to not make the father kind of talk too much. He just says one thing, looks away, and he's silent. And it's like a bomb, and it's kind of crushing. I was so sad by that. And it's earned a lot of points for a character that I didn't care about during the beginning. I think he earns a lot of my interest and attention once he gets hurt. It was very cathartic for me.
Of course,
Like it was,
yes.
I was like, "Oh yeah, fucking
makes
get there,
sense. Tell me
hurt
more."
yourself." And then he goes like, "Watch this," and then he goes and jumps. Oh, oh, oh! I'm like, "Yeah, motherfucker, get there."
I really like that one.
The
I didn't
attention
expect it to happen. I
was
thought he was
very
joking. Yeah.
And I was like, "Yes!" And then they go to the car, and it feels like a Ren and Stimpy scene where he's like this cartoony shot of him in the car like this. Oh, oh, oh. And it was like, "You did this. You did it. You washed your hands off of me. You didn't want this to happen." It was like,
Metaphorically. Of course he meant it metaphorically.
it's like, like he's like the way it was written and making me laugh out of his own pain was so like I was bought to the character in that moment, laughing of his pain and because of his pain. And then when he gets to the hospital, he gets my respect by the fact that he actually saves the teacher and he doesn't fill in their insurance. And this is an interesting thing. I think that the film, in terms of theme, really likes to focus around this essential question of what is a teacher-student relationship. And there is these opposite ideas between should a teacher be objective and exact in his teachings and not really be open to the students' needs, or should we be more flexible about his teachings and be open to the students, to listening to the student? Because normally it's the reverse. The student listens to the teacher, who is his mentor figure. But what is it when actually the teacher needs to listen to the student, not only to actually help him in a more emotional, personal way, and the best of teachers can be that mentor figure, that father figure that can help him in a personal way, but also what does it mean to listen to a student's needs when that actually helps the teacher in his own kind of personal way? Because there's a lacking or a flaw in the character of Paul Hunnam, in the sense that because he becomes this sort of celibate monk, only dedicated to his books and his academic knowledge, he doesn't really see the outside world. There's this beautiful kind of cut. The opening sequence is like this dialogue between interiors and exteriors, these snowy landscapes and the world of within of Barton boarding school, and we are all kind of brought by the flow of this lullaby of the 70s, like the slumber of sleep, kind of bought by that kind of cheery spirit. And then that song cuts very abruptly to the inside of the office of Paul Giamatti. You see the pipe, you see all the details of his stuff, the whole pile of books, him writing the reviews of the essays, and saying Philistines, rancid Philistines. And you immediately see who that character is, because the music cuts and you cuts to what? This classical music, this pile of books. He is this kind of monk only dedicated to this knowledge, and he's very firm in that. He no longer has a connection to the outside world or to a sense of compassion, and I think that's what he's trying to retrieve. And over time, you see that he does have ambition. He's writing a book. If he gets pushed a little bit further and he leaves his comfort zone, he will write that book. Actually, one of the interesting scenes that happens in this film is when Angus becomes an agent into that. Angus teaches Paul through his actual skills, which are the complete opposite to what the professor, Paul Hunnam, represents in terms of values, which is lying and deceit and cutting corners as a student, that kind of juvenile sense of adventure of bending corners to get your way. It's always interesting when a character's values, who are the complete opposite of another character, teaches that other character something. And you have a perfect example of that scene when Hugh Kavanagh, this kind of accomplished academic, the complete opposite to Paul, comes in and says, "Oh, Paul, how have you been?" And he's forced to lie. And that's a moment of true character where through pressure, he's forced to, actually reveal the opposite of himself, to actually lie, to actually show himself as more of an accomplished guy. I've studied abroad. And then Angus comes into play. So it's an added layer. And he says, "Oh, he's writing a book," So that's interesting because we retrieve a hidden goal of the character was discussed previously in the film, that he's writing this book, but he's always postponing it. And now, because he kind of makes the promise to Hugh Kavanagh that he's going to write it and accomplish it, he needs to do it. And then actually by the end of the movie, it actually becomes something that he needs to do. He's pushed by circumstances of his actions towards Angus to actually be fired of this comfort zone, which is staying at Barton, where he's too comfortable in his little nutshell, to actually go out there and start a new life, maybe get married, maybe find a connection, write his book. And I think this is one of the most intriguing character arcs, which is not often that explored, which is a character who is in a comfort zone, and at the beginning of a movie, apparently doesn't want anything, doesn't have a clear goal. That's much more to the side of the students and Angus. And then over time, you understand that the goal isn't something from him having a clear want that he's driving at, but there being a lacking in his life. That over time, through how the exposition is relayed, that is shown to us that there's a lacking, and then Angus comes into play to make him realize that, listen, you could drive at that, you could actually do something about it. And that's very interesting, the way that at certain moments in time, through that scene with Hugh Kavanagh, how Angus has a propellant role in it, and pushes his teacher to learn something about his potential, where he can go. It's very interesting. And there's also this scene, for example, I think Payne is very aware of this, where because the opening title sequence is very much about how these different places in a boarding school or university, how the dormitories function, how a canteen exists. You have these slow dissolves, these slow kind of traveling shots over the students in the canteen, eating amongst each other in their set tables. And then you have the teachers in their own separate tables, that this idea of hierarchy, and you are there, the teachers are there. And you have this clear position of the way that the teachers behave towards their students in that environment of the school is different. They are an authority figure, and they are a lot more prone to set the morality principles that they need to follow. Now, when you have a party scene at the home of Miss Keynes, the adults suddenly become students, and the way to behave amongst themselves through the sheer pressure of the social pressure of being amongst people of their age group turns them into these people that, much like their younger selves once were, still are capable of daydreaming about being in love by someone else. Like the whole thing with Paul Giamatti's character, Paul Hunnam, and his crush that becomes a crush, Miss Kane. He feels like a little
acting moment.
Beautiful acting moment. I think that is amazing. And he becomes like a total like little kid who is hopeful that she looks at him, but she doesn't. He has a husband, and that pen. Oh my God, that pen, when he is in the sofa and then pans to her kissing her husband, it's like, oh my God. I was like, oh, I know what that I know what that is like. Like, but it's so awful.
the thing is, the more you get to know Paul's character, and he becomes similar to Angus, and you see that they're both kind of similar and
Yeah, in
depressed,
some ways
really.
they are. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, in a lot of ways, they're both taking pills for depression.
It's true. It's
I
true. It's true.
think it really makes you sort of, for me, it really helped reevaluate how much they're similar. And so that's that, as you said, that moment in the party where they're acting like kids. It's exactly the point. I mean, when put in certain circumstances, they lie. Paul character's lies. He becomes sort of giddy with the excitement of this woman liking him, and really you see that he's a teenager, or that has had went through a lot of stuff as well, like Angus, and became depressed. And really, they aren't that different. And I think that's very well expressed with his goodbye at the end, where they both say, good luck, you're gonna make it, or something along those terms.
Essentially, the difference I think lies in perhaps there are different levels of maturity. That's what. But in a lot of ways,
No,
else
I
they are
think
similar.
I think it's more in terms of the age itself and the fact that you need to take on certain roles, and you need to seem
I think you
like you
become more
are.
mature. Clearly, there's the
I mean,
age
yes,
difference
but
comes with
Of
that.
course.
yes, but I mean, the fact that he doesn't lie. Of course he lies. It's the sort of character that he puts on as a teacher in a high class school. But of course he lies,
Yeah, of
and
course, of
you
course.
see that throughout the
But I don't
film.
think that's a sign of immaturity. That's a sign that we all have. It's we all
No, no,
are
no, no.
have
I never said
frustrations
it's
and
immaturity.
weaknesses.
I just mean to say that they're very sort of the same person, just displaying in different ways, in different times, and then converging as the film advances to understand that they're kind of similar, and that they're really hiding different parts of themselves, but they're not that different people. And that to me was the most interesting part. That well, as I said in the beginning, the redemptive sort of arc of Paul's character, that we're really finding that you can understand Angus' story, and Angus can understand Paul's story, and they both grow because of it. So yeah, I'm not sure I completely agree with this idea that their morals or their values are always completely different. Rather, I think it's more of a they need to play these different roles, and especially as the film is progressing, and we don't entirely see them until sufficient things have happened plot wise for us to really understand that really they were always similar.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think they both put on this like a mask of like a certain arrogance towards the other, like a certain superiority. I think this is true of both of them. Although Tomás focuses more on Angus.
I'm gonna start
But I
having
think
posters of his face in my room,
no,
planning
but I
his
think
murder.
I do think both of them have that sort of attempt at putting on that show, that type of output to people. And as the film goes on, you understand that there's underlying problems with them, and there's underlying questions with them, which is very literalized in the sense of they both take the same pills for depression. But it's even before that, you already saw that these are two guys that have certain similar traits in how they behave towards the others. But Chiamari's character is obviously much more like he's much more of a outcast, and you can see it because of his age. You understand that he's much more of an outcast because, I mean, even his body smells like fish, which is like it's not pleasant, and he sort of accepts it as something that makes him unpleasant to other people, and that's what Angus and Mary, so that's what they bring to him in sense, is that they accept him and they like him and they clearly create a bond. And I think the film's narrative arc, in many ways, it's sort of a conventional story that is, like you have the beginning, the student and the teacher that hate each other or they have a lot of problems, and like from the beginning, okay, by the end these guys are going to have a strong relationship, it's going to be poignant, it's going to be beautiful. But I think it's so well done that and like seeing
Oh, for
a
of
conventional
course,
film well done,
it
it's
is
always
very well
nice.
done. It
Yeah,
is. I totally agree. I
Yeah,
really like the
yeah, I
film. I
agree.
think
It's
it really
very familiar, the story.
it
yeah,
really
exactly,
accomplishes a lot of the things that it sets out to do completely. I really enjoyed it. I
exactly.
agree.
And also with Mary's
Uh,
character, the cook, I think
Mary's so interesting. I really
she
like
Yeah,
her
has
character as
such
well.
like it's such a cohesive arc. It's so well defined, and not a lot of moments. Well, she does appear a lot, but I feel like there are specific moments where you really understand the narrative importance of certain scenes with her, and it becomes a really solid arc. I think it's a very interesting character,
Yeah,
and
and it would be
really blends well with the other two.
yeah, I agree. And it would be so easy for like the actress to overact and give like that Oscar type of performance
Oh,
that
I
you'd
love that
see
she
in a lot of films.
doesn't. I love that she
And she
doesn't.
doesn't. It's
That's
so
it.
it's underplayed. It's super well done. I can
Yeah,
see other
because,
actors just going crazy on a role like this, and I can imagine it being so annoying.
Viola
But no,
Davis.
it's real. Yeah, maybe.
Crying, snot.
Or
just,
what's the
My
other
son
Octavia
is
Spencer?
dead.
Oh, I can totally see Octavia Spencer like those Octavia Spencer faces.
I don't think she would. I don't know if she's the type of actress for a role like this. I
Maybe
think
not.
maybe she would do fine in a role like this because it's more
I feel she's more
underacting.
snappy.
Yeah, she's more like this.
snappy.
So maybe she would surprise. But yeah, but
no, I mean, it also always comes down to
yeah,
the
exactly.
directing choices of
Yeah,
of
it's a
Alexander
very
Payne
well
here.
cast
So
film.
Yeah, very done.
But yeah, Mary's, she was so, there are certain times when you're watching a film that you associate the characters with people that you've seen in your life, and this was a film where I really had echoes in Angus of people that like him that I've seen in my life in Hunnam's teachers I liked. So I was very biased to Hunnam's character, kind of a stern teacher, and her just a lot of women like her, like these big kind of moms who have these big soft hearts. Say
the
very
cook
little
from my high
and-
school.
What?
The cook from my high school.
The cook from my high school, of course. So she doesn't say much, but she has this kind of strength to her. And it's there, her physicality, and both her physicality and her personality shows like a very strong kind of presence. But yeah, I think she's very, very interesting on her personality. Like she shares something with the teacher in the sense that they always come to this kind of like meeting at night in that sofa watching TV where they have this commentary at the end of the day about just generic things about how the day went, what's it like with students, and then Angus and how she's doing, and they feel a really big respect from Paul regarding her in terms like she's a working class mom trying to make her way, just lost her kid, and there's like a humility to her that he respects. And then it's interesting because the party really functions as a sort of midpoint way into the narrative where a certain truth of the characters is revealed. By a certain pressure, you see a lot more about Paul and his inner yearnings about his ambitions in life in terms of connecting with people finally again. And then later on, you see the aspect of what other aspects of him as an academic he wants to pursue. And then about Mary, I just think it's so interesting that they choose to pick this little object of the vinyl recorder, and she just says, I own this place, this is mine, and she's all drunk, and she lets herself go. She becomes, the more drunk she becomes, the more possessive she is about that corner of the living room playing the music for her dead son, the music that he liked. And then the whole thing comes together, the climax, the sequence climax, with kind of Angus pulling his teacher into the kitchen, and bam, she's kind of turned against camera, crying, broken down, and they need to leave. And because you're biased against the students, against the arrogance of Angus, a character who is still mysterious to us, and I think fairly so, we shouldn't know much about him. When he becomes selfish, when he says, oh, come on, I was having my way with the niece Elise, inside the house. And then the teacher needs to reproach him and say, this woman is bereft. I'm completely behind him. I'm completely behind the teacher. But then he says, my dad is dead, shut up. And he goes away. And then you have the bereft woman, the one who broke down, step in and say, you don't say a young kid who was left alone in Christmas.
Yeah, that was a great moment as well.
That he isn't wanted. And I was like, well, that's very interesting.
Choice of character development.
Very interesting, choice of character to say that. She who was always besides him, and then bam, goes right after with it. I think he keeps him in check. He's sort of mentor figure for Paul himself,
and it makes sense. Like she lost her son. She's always thinking of her son, and she sees
has
in
that
him
maternal.
Exactly.
Yeah, she has that maternal feeling towards him, and it's so amazing by the end when she comes in and she willingly gives her hand to him and to stay together. I think it's very kind of heartfelt.
And it's a very nice moment, like that final with them all looking at each other, like they went through something together, and they're like, like acknowledging that they respect each other.
Yeah.
So through looks, going into the office like they're being, like especially Paul Giamatti, like that's another moment where he's turned into a kid, quote unquote, like earlier already it already happened, like going into the office of the
Yeah.
director to be told on something like that. It's I think it's very strong. By the end, the film really like nails everything the way it should be doing, and it does perfectly, I think.
Yeah, and also
Definitely.
I really like the scene where Angus is coming down the stairs and then she asks, "No, where are you going? You're gonna help me up the stairs." I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Very
just a
true.
little
That's very
moment.
interesting.
Yeah.
And also, I love the shot of, you see Mary's sister appearing in the balcony with her husband, and then right after you see Angus kind of coming into shot and smiling. I just trying to fit into the sense of family. I just think it's such a nice detail that they work there.
And
Kind of
Mary has
his
such a
yearning for
great
family.
line at the party where she's like next to the record player and she says like, "They put me in charge of the music," and then like
Yeah,
the janitor
yeah,
friend
yeah.
says, "Who put?" And she says, "I did."
I did.
Yeah, that's very good.
Great film.
Very good. Lovely. It's one film I'm watching and I'm thinking it's gonna be great to watch again eventually.
Oh, yeah,
To revisit.
definitely.
Just
And
keep company.
really make me reconsider the best Oscar, best actor Oscar.
Oh yeah, you would give it to Paul Giamatti or too soon? Let's leave it to the predictions later on in the line.
I mean, it's one of those things like
You know,
Killian,
I did
I
thought the
know he's
same
gonna
thing.
win. I know he's gonna win.
Yeah.
But I really would like to see Giamatti being
Oh
recognized.
yeah, there's that wishful.
It's like
Dream.
it's like last year with Brendan Fraser,
Yeah, I
But he
understand.
actually did win, so
You know what? I actually had the same feeling after watching this film the second time. I was like, it would really be cool if Paul Giamatti won an Oscar, like the deserving Oscar for him. I think he plays it so
But the
well.
thing, like, I also think Killian really deserves. It's like it's
Killian
very.
too.
Yeah,
it's one of those that's
Yeah.
really
I mean, I just
you kind of
shared
forget
with you.
everything that he does in Oppenheimer. So
I shared with
Yeah.
you. I've rewatched Oppenheimer recently during Christmas, and I've shared with you today. He won the Golden Globe for Best Actor,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
Nolan won too, Best Director, and Lily won Best Actress.
Actress.
And Robert
yeah.
Downey Jr. won Best Supporting Actor. But the thing is, not every single one of them gets repeated in the Oscars. Sometimes
Yeah,
it's different. Last year, Austin Butler won Best Actor, and then was Fraser.
They switch it
So-
up. We'll see.
But maybe
Sometimes
this year
they
I
don't.
got the feeling that Killian might just win. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I would be happy either way. I think they're both
Yeah.
incredible. And that's all for today. If you'd like to reach out and suggest a film for the next episode, you can find us on the podcast official Instagram and Facebook pages. Feel free to subscribe, share this episode, or simply give us a like. That's how our podcast can grow ever more groovy. And if you're on YouTube and want to see more videos like this, check out this next video right here. Thanks for listening and see you next time.
See you next time.
adios.
Bye bye.